woe is me, I need a new project. If you err on, oh, I don't mind rustic, it's not my favorite, do not knit with this yarn. Do not. Capital do not. You will hate it. It's just very bittersweet. I'm excited about it, but I'm also like, oh gosh, it's already almost over.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching also known as Nora Knits. Thanks so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. I feel like I just haven't sat down in a while, and it's because last week was like the craziest week ever. It was all things Rhinebeck, and so I was really happy to chat about that last week. But I have to say it feels pretty good to sit down, survey the WIPs today, tell you about my finished object, and let's all just get caught up, both you and me. So please go ahead and get cozy, grab your knitting, and why don't we go ahead and dive on in. If you did see my Rhinebeck video, then you kind of got the sneak peek. I did, in fact, kind of finish my Miles shirt jacket by Haley Smedley or Ozetta just in time for Rhinebeck. So I say kind of, like mostly finished. I was just missing one of the pockets. I quite literally was sewing a pocket onto the front of this cardigan at midnight, 1 in the morning, the night before I had one of the most chaotic days of my life. And so I just said, forget it. We're stopping at 1. That will be good enough. And then just this morning, I sewed on the other, which is funny because I've worn this a ton of times since then. I would say most days I've left the house. This has been the layering piece that I've opted for, which is amazing because that was the whole point. So this is a top-down drop shoulder cardigan style jacket. I would call this a shacket because it is a shirt jacket. So it has a collar to it. It has this shirt look to it. And it's definitely intended to be quite oversized so that you can really wear it as a jacket, which is what I had intended the whole time. I knit mine out of Istex Plotu Lopi in the red-brown colorway. And that is an unspun yarn, which the pattern calls for a different brand of unspun yarn. They call for Wool Dreamers Manchalopi, and I opted for the Istex Plotu literally because I liked the color of this. It was a little bit easier to access for me, and also it was a little bit cheaper. So actually, maybe when I run through the price details, I can try to put on the screen somewhere how much this would have cost if I had done it in the Wool Dreamers Manchalopi, in case that's information that would be helpful to you. I knit mine up using the recommended 6mm needles, and I knit mine in the size large. And other than that obvious yarn swap, the only other changes I made to this pattern, it was literally just that my row gauge was a little bit off, and so I made a few calculations in like increase rates and stuffs when it came to more of like the yoke of the sweater, just to kind of try and compensate for the issue I had with my row gauge. But otherwise, it was really knit to pattern. So you start by knitting the back panel, you pick up for the fronts, typical drop shoulder construction. You work your way down the body, and being that this is more of a jacket style, it's definitely a longer body. My goal was for mine to hit like kind of just under my butt in the back. That way, if I wanted to wear this with like leggings or something on a hike, I would just feel a little more covered. And then my favorite part about this pattern, and now having worn it to Rhinebeck especially, but out and about elsewhere, the number one comments that I've gotten, like compliment the number one compliment that I've gotten on this is how much everyone loves the little bit of a curve that's on the hem, which is also what was my favorite part about this shacket. I couple years ago now did literally an entire pattern roundup all about shacket patterns, and it really shined a light on the fact that the details with this pattern in particular are what set it apart from a lot of the others for me. And it's mostly in that curved hem detail. It's worked using German short rows. So it gives this overall kind of more polished look, but it also really helps when you have this kind of oversized boxy fitting jacket cardigan. It's super helpful to have that curve, allowing to show a little figure underneath, just breaking up some of the otherwise like kind of oversized boxy elements of it. Sorry guys, I did my hair differently today and it's driving me nuts. And so I'm trying not to touch it, but I know that I am. So, okay, I'm gonna try not to touch my hair from here on out. So once you've worked that curved hem, you finish off the bottom hem with some ribbing and an Italian tubular sewn bind off. It's a little fussy using the unspun yarn, which was held double the whole time. It's just very fragile yarn. So anytime you're doing those sewn bind offs, that was a little finicky, not my favorite thing to do, but doable nonetheless. I then picked up for the sleeves, knit those down. There's some decreases worked, and I made sure that I knit mine rather long. I'm thrilled with the length that they've wound up with. They're at this perfect kind of cozy, grabby length, but then I wanted them to be at such a length that if I really wanted them out of my way, I could just cuff them back. And I've worn this just like this quite a few times already as well. If I wanted it to either look a little bit more put together or just to get my sleeves kind of out of my way, then you go back and you add the button placket. That's more 1x1 ribbing. You cast on, you pick up stitches for the collar and you knit kind of double this, fold it under on the inside and seam that down. And then all that's left to do are knit the pockets, which are sewn onto the outside. And where I left you guys last time was that I had kind of those little finishing details to complete. And then I was also trying to decide what buttons I would use. And I'm curious to know if I picked the ones that you thought I would. These are the buttons I was leaning towards the whole time, but when I was holding them just against the shacket, I started to kind of reconsider and I thought I might go with the more clean finished brass button. But in the end, once I put this on, I felt like the very clean circular buttons almost made this look like a military style coat in kind of a weird way. I don't know if it was just the collar or what, but it wasn't giving off the right vibe. Whereas these ones, they're a little bit more organic looking. And I just felt like it went a little bit better with the whole vibe. Now, a couple of notes I have yarn wise. This wound up being, I mean, I mentioned it last time. At that point, the only person who, other than me, who had felt this was Mr. Knits, and he does not like a rustic yarn. He hates the feeling of this. Since then, a lot of people have commented on the feeling of this, and no one likes the feeling of this yarn, with the exception of me and my mother. So I don't know why that is. I think I'm just not particularly sensitive, probably because my mom's not particularly sensitive to these like itchier fibers. But this Istex Plotalopi, it's not for the faint of heart. If you err on, oh, I don't mind rustic, it's not my favorite, do not knit with this yarn. Do not. Capital do not. You will hate it. However, I was speaking with other people at Rhinebeck about the other options for yarns for this shacket, and one person who I spoke to in particular who made me feel a lot better about it, because I was actually a little self-conscious about the fact I was like, this is the most miserable fabric ever. This is horrible. I don't know what I was thinking. It doesn't really bother me, but everyone's like, it's just not a pleasant fabric. And I was talking to Haley from Knit Weekend, and she was telling me that she had used the Wool Dreamers Manchalopi. I can't remember now if it was for the Miles shirt jacket or something else. But in her opinion, she found that it was just really lacked structure and shape. And so for those reasons, she wasn't getting as much wear out of that garment as she had wanted to. So the Istex Plotalopi seems to hold its shape a little bit more and have a little bit more structure to it. So she thought that it was actually maybe a better swap. So I felt a lot better about that. We also had seen if you watched my run back video, I kind of talked about these things a little more, which is why I'm not going to harp on them now, but there was an unspun yarn at Rhinebeck. It was called Queso, and that was a super soft unspun yarn. So I'm really curious to see if Marlene from Marlene Knits winds up knitting up one of these Miles shirt jackets with her unspun yarn. Then I'm really curious to see what she thinks of the fabric, because this is kind of tricky. So that's my note on the yarn, on the fabric. The only other thing that I wanted to comment on with this design is just something that I hadn't picked up on in photos, and I don't know if it bothers me or doesn't, but I wanted to point it out in case you thought you were going to wear this garment a certain way. So I feel like most of the photos of this cardigan are it opened, and that's like realistically how I'm mostly going to wear it. But I did just kind of assume that the buttons ran from top to bottom of this. And you might be able to tell that the first button is actually way down here. So if I were to button this, you wind up with this situation at the top. Now, bear in mind as well, my row gauge issue was a little funky, so this might just be because of my row gauge. I don't really know why it kind of sits like that, but I just think that's worth noting. If you thought that you were going to knit this for it to be like a closed collar jacket that you could cozy up in on a cold day and kind of like protect your neck, you might want to make a little modification where you actually knit the collar first, and then maybe you come back and do the button band just so that you have that actual button placket here, and make sure, of course, to add that buttonhole. But I didn't think about it beforehand. I decided at the end of the day it wasn't going to bother me, especially because my yarn is so rustic. I don't really need this on my neck. It's not the greatest feeling. It's not the worst thing. But I just thought that I would throw that out there. The pattern has you use 4 buttons to close this, and so it really feels like you're not intended to close it at all, and that's totally fine. That's exactly how I plan to wear this most of the time. I literally have just been taking OC out and kind of wrapping myself up in it. One time we went on a walk and it got a little chilly, and I did go ahead and button it, but most of the time that's not how I plan to wear this cardigan. I'm just throwing those things out there for you to know. So I think that's kind of all I have to say about the cardigan itself. I'll mention you might be able to tell the metal buttons are like arguably a little too heavy for this unspun fabric, which is very lightweight, and it's super warm and toasty without being heavy, and that's what I wanted. So I'm a happy camper. Let me go ahead and get you the finished object stats. All right, so this is the Miles shirt jacket pattern by Ozetta Haley Smedley. On Ravelry, this pattern costs about $8, and it was in my library. It's been in my library for quite some time. And it also was gifted. So thank you again to the person who purchased this pattern and gifted it to me. I so appreciate that. The yarn that I used was Istex Plotulopi in the red-brown colorway. That was yarn that was indeed in stash, which also means that this project totally supports my hashtag 2025 from the vault, which is a really just loose kind of knit along theme for the year, where I've been emphasizing and focusing on knitting projects using yarn that I have in stash or patterns that I have in my library. So this is one that checks off both of those boxes, and I feel really good about it. If you're working on anything that kind of supports the same theme, please feel free to use hashtag 2025 from the vault to be entered in a giveaway at the end of the year, but also maybe one coming up sooner than you think. Now, this yarn at full price, it ranges all over the place, but it's usually around $14 for a single plate of it. When I purchased this yarn, I found it for $7.43 per plate. And I tapped into a total of 7 balls. Now, I just barely tapped into that 7th ball, but I would definitely say that if you're planning to knit this size large, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have all 7 plates to knit this up. That means that had I purchased the yarn at full price, the yarn for this project would have been about $98. However, because I found the yarn on sale, it was about $52.01 in yarn for me. The additional expenses that I had for this project, of course, included the buttons, and those cost about a total of $5, which means that the full price project total, which is if I had paid full price for the yarn, had I bought the pattern plus those additional expenses, this would have come out to about $111. However, because the pattern was gifted and I got the yarn on sale along with the buttons, my project total was $57.01. And that's all for a project that wound up being on my needles for a total of 65 days. I literally wiped this one off of my project counter today since I just finished sewing on the second pocket. But that means that my cost per day to knit this one was about 88 cents. I really feel like that $60-ish benchmark is how much you would be able to find a similar garment to this out in retail in more fast fashion stores. And so I feel good about the way I was able to make this myself at a really reasonable price. So that is everything I have to share about my Miles shirt jacket. If you plan to make this and you have any extra questions I didn't answer, please just let me know in the comments. And otherwise, let's go ahead and move on to the next project. I would love to give you my next update on my Christmas cardigan. This is my first time designing my own piece of knitwear, and I'm so enjoying the process. I have to say, I am like, the comments you guys have been leaving about this design and just about this project have made me so happy. I love that you guys are also enjoying this, and it's super encouraging to see your anticipation for this finished project when I'm over here kind of in the thick of things, making some decisions that I don't know how they're going to turn out. And so I really, really, really appreciate you and everyone who's taken the time to say something nice about my cardigan. Let me get her onto Helena the Hanger so you could see where we're at this week. All right, I just had to scoot over a little so that you could see the whole thing. As you can tell, we're really working our way down through the body. If you can remember back to the last podcast, I showed you guys that OC was there decorating the tree. We had the window and the garland and the start of some stockings. And now we're on our way to the final motifs for the front of the cardigan, which is very bittersweet. I'm excited about it, but I'm also like, oh gosh, it's already almost over. So let me give you guys a second to guess. What do you think we're working on now? Ready? Okay. I don't know if you can even see, but I'm going to start with my OC side again. So at this point, OC is completely done. And also, if you aren't caught up to speed with this, I am knitting this cardigan using the color work method of intarsia, which means that I have the different blocks of color on these little shuttles, I think that is what they're called. So when you're working with stranded color work, you're usually only working a few stitches in each color. And so you're able to carry the other yarns across the back of your work in between where you're actually using that color. When it comes to intarsia, this really is a helpful method to use when you have things like you see up here where it is the background color, a block of color, and then the background color. You wouldn't really want to carry your background color for the entirety of the back of this block. And so instead, you have the different block of color on a different ball of yarn entirely, but then you also have the background color on a different ball of yarn entirely. So I kind of will work with one shuttle of the background color, drop that in a way that you're twisting it with the next color, pick up my blue shuttle and I would work that. Now here where I had the moon in the window, it was background color, switch with the blue, switch with the moon color, switch with the blue, back to the background color. I used that one then to work all the way to the other side. And I would work that up until I hit OC. I would use my OC yarn, a little background shuttle, a little green shuttle, and then back to the background color again. So another background color shuttle. And that's why you see all these little dangly bits at the bottom. These are all the times I have to change color essentially across the cardigan. I don't find it to be a difficult method. It reminds me very much of something like braiding hair. Oftentimes, the hardest part is just trying to figure out how you manage all of these different components at the same time. So a lot of times if you're teaching someone how to braid hair, they're like, I totally get it that the hair goes over the middle and then the outside over the middle again. But how do I hold all of these strands of hair in my hands and keep them separated and organized at the same time? It's totally the same thing with intarsia knitting. You're like, I understand. I just twist them. I do the old over the new and okay, got that. But how do I just keep up with all of these different shuttles? And it's sometimes it's easier than others. So far, I've enjoyed the process, and I kind of like the fact that I'm not tethered to one ball of yarn. It's all kind of free floating at all times, so I don't mind it at all. But the reason I got into this intarsia spiel was because I made my color work charts with like the ultimate design of what you're going to wind up seeing in the end. And then I simplified them down to just like the bare bones of blocks of color so that I wouldn't have to, for example, with OC, she looks like a little baby dinosaur right now. I originally was planning to add like the detail lines and outline markings and her nose and stuff like that. And that just means more little shuttles of yarn for like a stitch or 2 or 3. And so I'm doing the background blocks of color, and then I'm coming back with duplicate stitch, embroidery, maybe even creating some more three-dimensional elements and just knitting a new ear entirely, right? And then sewing it onto her. I'll figure all that out at the end. But what you're looking at right now is kind of like the background base of the painting. And I have yet to come back and add all of my highlights and details and all of that. So sorry for the spiel, but I didn't know if I had made that clear in the last podcast. So OC is now finally done. She is standing on top of what's going to be a stack of presents because sweet little OC is decorating the top of the Christmas tree. And then you might be able to tell that there's just a little present. There's going to be one more present on the other side of the tree. So currently I'm working on the blue present that's at the bottom of the stack. And I'm using the same red I've been using, just without any mohair. That was a thrifted cone of yarn. Anyone, can you guess where this gold color was from? That would be my ranunculus sweater. This is Malabrigo Sussurro in the Frank Ochre colorway. And then more of the same blue like we had up here. That's from my dad's Savin sweater. And then over here, I know everyone assumed it was going to be a fireplace on this side, but I'm hoping you can tell it's not, in fact, a fireplace, but look familiar, I hope. It's an ode to the piano background that you guys see every time you watch one of my videos. I did just make it more of an upright piano so that I could accommodate what's going to be some Christmas sheet music. And that's all going to be part of the details as well. So you could see down here, I've just done the piano keys, and I think those came out so cute. That is something that I did knit stranded because going every other stitch was quite easy to do with the stranded color work, and I didn't feel the need to come back and duplicate stitch that. I thought it would look a little cleaner to just knit that part stranded. But Everything else is intarsia. I think it's going really, really well. You could see that I'm getting some bunching in some areas. I think that's all going to be resolved. No problem with a good block. And we're really in the home stretch here. I mean, this is the piano, so we're like hitting the ground. And so I feel pretty confident saying that the next podcast, the body should be done. Shocking. I know. So I'm just absolutely loving this project. It's definitely my most mindful project. Every time I'm working on it, of course, I have to be sitting near the chart and I have to have all of this organized. So I really don't like to pull this out if I only have 10, 20 minutes to like squeeze in a row. It's not worth it to get this whole behemoth out for that, especially because anytime I encounter a new color, I usually have to reload one of these shuttles, which by the way, I just got these on Amazon and I'm really, really happy I bought them. They're making my life so much easier. In fact, you could see that the blue yarn I didn't put on a shuttle because I'd run out of the little ones and I knew I only needed a little bit, and that's causing me a little bit of a disaster right now. So I don't like to pull this out when I only have a few minutes. This is definitely like I have a couple hours of knitting time. So let me work on my Christmas cardigan, and I think that it's going really well in that regard. When I hit the bottom of the color work motifs, that's when I'm going to decide how I'm finishing the hem. As of right now, I'm leaning towards either an I-cord bind off or a folded hem, but I'm going to wait to make that decision once I finish the color work and I can try it on and see where the length is hitting to see if I need to buy any more length by adding more of a ribbing detail at the bottom, or if it's already longer than I'd like it to be, maybe I'll just do the I-cord. So I'll play that by ear, but definitely if you have any suggestion, if you think that there's a better way to go about it or what you think would be best, I would absolutely love to hear it from you. And otherwise, you guys, that's my Christmas cardigan, my pride and joy first design. I'm so happy. I'm starting to do some research on exactly how I'm going to go about the sleeves. So we'll get there when we get there, but I just couldn't be happier with this. While I have Helena next to me here, I can give you just the quickest little update on my darling cardigan by Veronica Lindbergh with Tova Kika. I'm knitting mine with K&C Cloud Paka in the cotton candy colorway, and this feels like the cardigan that never ends because it was done and then it wasn't done, and now I just hate knitting button bands, so it's taking forever, but I'll just give you the brief update. Here we have it. You can probably see that the button band is entirely done on the right side. That's where the buttonholes are. You guys already knew that. In fact, I think when I spoke about this last, I was telling you that I was on a mission just to get those buttonholes done so that I could bring this to a special knit night. And that was to join my friend Chelsea, who is known as True Lane here on YouTube, and Marlene from Marlene Knits, along with another friend of Chelsea's, Simone. So the three of us got together and we had a little girls knit night, had so much fun. I brought this project and we were all just knitting together, and it was like the best time, the most wonderful, relaxing, chill time ever. I'm glad I got to work on this there, but it's definitely been slow moving ever since. And now I'm just trying to get from here down to here before next weekend. Because when I cast this project on 92 days ago now, I really felt like I was so ahead of schedule with trying to get this done and out of my way early before my sister's baby shower. And now I'm down to the wire. I don't know how this happens to me, but I keep just trying to put on my blinders and get a few rows of double knit button band done. It's just such a slog, and I feel like I've knit enough double knit button bands this year. I'm kind of over it. She says before she's most likely going to knit a double knit button band on my Christmas cardigan. But at least then I'll be excited to see like the finished project. This, I know what it's going to look like in the end. It's just such a simple cardigan. It's not something I really want to be spending more time on. And I really just need to get it done, but you'll be able to see that I've wanted to do anything but work on this, essentially. So that's where we're at. It better get done by the next podcast because I need to be wearing this literally a week from when you're seeing this video. So please yell at me. Yell at me in the comments. Make sure that I get this done. That's my darling cardigan by Veronica Lindbergh. So yeah, definitely I've been wanting to do anything but work on the darling cardigan, which means that I still have a few WIPs to tell you about because I have been scattered. Let me start with the one that I was actually working on in the Rhinebeck update video last week. And that was a new cast on that you guys haven't seen yet on the podcast. It is the Midland Neck by Laura Penrose. This is a garter stitch dicky pattern. So it's one of those like turtleneck scarf type things that cover your chest and your back. But it's really not a scarf or a sweater or a vest. It's its own thing. And so it's called a dicky. I have been wanting to knit this for the past year now. I knew that I wanted to use this yarn in particular to knit myself a nice dicky that I could wear under my coat. So this is Barocco Ultra Wool in this dark brown colorway. I feel like it's called Bear, but I can't remember exactly. I used this yarn to knit up the Naringa Yoga winter sweater last year, and immediately after knitting that sweater, I thought that this would make for a really perfect accessory to go with my winter coat because my winter coat is a dark brown color, and a lot of times I get makeup on the inside edge of the collar of my winter coats. And so I thought I would use this superwash yarn to make something, a little barrier to go in between, but also to keep my chest nice and warm because that's definitely something I need more of in my life. Now, it's garter stitch and it's knit from side to side. I don't think that any of that computed in my brain when I went to cast this on 10 days ago now. Realistically, I was thinking, the Christmas cardigan is a lot of work. If I don't have time to work on it, what am I gonna knit? This darling cardigan, the button band is like slogging through and I need to finish it, but can't really like knit a double knit button band and watch soccer at the same time. Boo, woe is me. I need a new project. And I thought I would just be a little bit more disciplined and not cast on a sweater. I thought an accessory would be a nice little cleansing of the palette. But I did not know that I picked like the most I'll put it this way. If you enjoy knitting accessories and you feel like you haven't been challenged in a little while and you just want a really fresh construction, 100% this is your pattern because Laura Penrose is a wizard and I don't know how she even managed to figure out how to construct this thing. But I was like middle of the night, let me cast this on. It's going to be so easy peasy. And my brain was not prepared for it. Obviously, since then, things have gotten a little bit easier. So you're like casting on with an I-cord cast on, you're working short rows, you're making things longer and shorter. At one point, I like dropped all of my stitches and messed up the I-cord. So there's definitely a spot where the I-cord is like strangling itself. And I couldn't care. I couldn't bring myself to care. The imperfections are what make something so perfectly handmade. It was on the back. I cannot be bothered. But where I'm at right now is that I have knit across the like neck hole portion of the back. So this will be sitting on my back. And then I have literally just finished kind of doing the same thing on this front piece. So the next thing that has to happen is kind of rejoining the front and the back and then working all of those same shaping elements that had been worked on the right side, on the left side. And my brain couldn't do it today. It's a very fun construction. I just was like, oh yeah, I'll whip up a quick little dicky. It'll be a good time. It's going to be easy peasy. Give my brain a break. And I was wrong, but that doesn't mean it's not fun and enjoyable and a clever construction that I am enjoying. And I enjoy the squishy garter fabric, even though I hate the feeling of this yarn. It's going to be great. I also did not read the yarn requirements before diving into this project. And according to the retroactive search I had done, doesn't seem like I have enough yarn, but I'm feeling confident for no reason anyway. I'm knitting the adult small in this, and I'm really just, we're going to see what happens. I think it won't be an issue. Worst case, it's supposed to have a roll neck. I could always just knit a single layer on mine. I'm not so concerned about it, but I have been enjoying it now, especially when you get to the actual neck hole part. Then you're working just back and forth in garter stitch, and that was why I was able to work on it during the Rhinebeck update video. And more than anything, I think I forget sometimes that while I love to knit sweaters, I truly don't have enough just normal practical accessories, and it is satisfying once in a while to get something like this on the needles, because this has been with me for 10 days. I've like barely worked on it and I've gotten so far. So especially once I'm working on the neck, I feel like this is going to breeze by and it'll be a good project to have, or a good thing to have in my library if nothing else. And I'll be really thrilled to have this finally to wear this winter. So that was a kind of random cast on, unexpected, but very fun nonetheless. So that is my Midland Neck by Laura Penrose. Final knitting whip is also a little bit more of an impulse cast on, but basically in the last podcast, I was showing you guys that Novita Knits had really generously gifted me a sweater's quantity of yarn to knit with their new collection for the new Veronica Lindbergh pattern that goes along with this collection. And that is her Nomad Sweater, which is a really simple, oversized, relaxed fitting sweater that has a blanket stitch detail on the edges. And truly, I just swatched with the yarn and like I just needed to get this on my needles as soon as possible. But this also was because the Midland Neck did not turn into as much as a mindless project as I thought it was going to be. So truly, I just wanted something to knit on while I was watching a soccer game. And I was able to cast this on. And just like my favorite thing about Veronica Lindbergh's stripe hype sweater, this is another, as I call it, hit the ground running sweater knitting. It does not start with short rows. It does not start with anything fancy or chaotic. You literally cast on and just start knitting until you reach your armhole depth. So what a beautiful time to cast on this rectangle. I've been enjoying having something simple like this. I have to revisit the pattern to see just how far I'm actually supposed to knit this, because I feel like we might be there or very close. But my goodness, is this yarn not glorious? I wish I had the label in front of me right now, but I think it fell off. It's the Novita and Lina Helene yarn, and it's a silk merino. It's gorgeous, it's soft, it's delightful, and I'm desperate for a sweater like this in my wardrobe. I wish I had it for this like fall season, because it would serve perfectly. It's just like a long sleeve shirt, but I'll take it whenever it's done. I literally cast this on 8 days ago and I've just been picking this up. I've been very disciplined. It's literally the like last resort project. Everything else is too much. You know, I'm in a weird spot with everything and I just need to knit some rows back and forth without looking. So I grabbed this guy. That's how I intend this to be until I finish some other things up. So that's my Nomad Sweater by Veronica Lindbergh. And last but not least, final whip is my crochet project, which is my crochet hexagon turtle that I'm working on with the ladies in my family as a surprise for my sister, for her baby, for the baby shower. And just like the cardigan has to be done next week, so does this giant turtle. So this is crochet and I'm working it out of a whole bunch of different loops and threads, chenille type yarns. And let me show you where things are at right now, but it's a little chaotic. This is a portion of what's going to be sort of the underbelly of the turtle. This is a portion of what's going to be the actual shell of the turtle, with that mint green hexagon being the center. This looks ultimately super chaotic for a couple of reasons. Number one, I am crocheting all of these pieces alongside my family, and a couple of them had to be sent out as care packages, and then they're going to be crocheted and sent back to me. So I'm hoping that those are going to be arriving by mid next week so that I can add them to these parts of the shell. I am not waiting on them to complete the other components. It's just that that's why these look a little funky right now, but also because I did officially run out of the white yarn, which has been the yarn I'm using to kind of marry everything together. So myself, my aunts, my cousins have crocheted the inner hexagons in the different colors as well as the ones on the belly. And then I've been just kind of keeping all the different gauges and everything in check by finishing them all out myself with 2 rounds of double crochet in the white. And then that's also made my life easier for going through and seaming them together, which I just like to do a good old-fashioned single crochet around all of the edges. So on the other side, there's going to be these little ridges where I've seamed them together. Not a problem for me at all. And I've run out of the white yarn, so I am going to pick up some more tomorrow. In the meantime, the other things that I have left to do are let's get a list going on the screen here because I don't know who I think I am. I need to crochet the half hexagons that kind of complete the shell. That's on both the back of the shell and the belly. I need to crochet the border around the shell's edge. I'd love your input. Do you think it should be a ruffle? Or do you think I should use a crochet shell stitch? I cannot decide, and my family was 50-50 on it too. So I'd love to know what you think. And otherwise, I just have to do the head and the fins, the little tail, and then I'm sewing a lining that's going to go on the inside of the shell, and it's going to be lightly stuffed with just some good old-fashioned polyfill. And I'll be attaching the 2 layers of the shell just to the back, and then they're going to be kind of tied together so my sister can take out the cushion, have the shell carcass and the cushion that could be washed separately, and only the head and the fins are going to be stuffed individually and with like the littlest bit of stuffing just so that they're not so flat. But also those I am working by just single crocheting, and I'm holding the yarn double using the same 5mm hook that we used for all of the granny squares, granny hexagons. And so this is actually half of what's going to be the head coming out from the turtle. I worked this by doing a magic circle. I started with 12 single crochets into that circle, joined in the round. And then after that point, I single crochet into every stitch, but each row I adjust how many times I increase so that on the first row, I crochet 1, increase 1, crochet 1, increase 1, work that around the whole thing. And then the next row, I would crochet 2, increase 1, crochet 2, increase 1. Next row would be crochet 3, increase 1. So on and so forth up until the point where the last row I worked, I think I wrote it down, but I think I was single crocheting 15, then increasing 1, and then I've just worked a single row without increasing, and now I'm basically going to work that same pattern back on the other side, but I'll be decreasing each row so that I wind up with just this kind of lightly, kind of just little bit off the ground domey head that's going to be sticking out from the front, and I have to embroider her little eyes on. I promise I'll get this all done before the shower, plus the arts and crafts I've agreed to do. Don't worry about it. But this has been the main fun over the week, especially because I did get together with the more in-state family, and we were each crocheting on this together. We had a really fun day doing that. And I'm just so excited to see what my sister thinks of this project. I actually think she's really going to love it. And I've certainly enjoyed the process of this, especially combined with all of the people whose hands are in on making this project. I'll definitely show you more photos when it's all done, which should be in the next podcast. Oh gosh, it better be done. So those are all of my whips. I have one more kind of silly story time plus acquisition for you. This was just so fun. So on the Saturday that was Rhinebeck, I did not take off the day from work. And it just so happened that where I was working the wedding that I had that day, I was close enough to Rhinebeck that I would be able to go from work to Rhinebeck. And that's why it was such a chaotic day for me. But the funniest thing was that the mother of the bride, where I was doing hair, is an avid knitter who goes to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival every year, but of course could not this year because her daughter was getting married. However, she showed me her Rhinebeck sweater. She was working on Andrew Mowry's Ooey Gooey, and I did take some photos of it. I just thought that this was hysterical. She was so, so, so sweet, and I so loved talking with her about knitting. I was actually wearing my shirt, my old shirt jacket that day, and the bridesmaids were like loving it. We just had it was too fun. It was just too fun, and it was so lovely. I've had brides that are knitters or crocheters or, these little bonding moments, but this was just too much of a coincidence. And I wasn't even supposed to be working this wedding this day, but the other girl I work with had told the bride beforehand. I guess it came up in conversation that she was a knitter, and the girl I worked with literally was like, "Oh, that's where Nora's going to be that day." And so we were able to finagle things that I could join her, and I'm just so glad that I was able to. And this kind woman, her name is Angela, she, before I left, was like, "I have to give you a few things." And I've never had this happen before, but how sweet is this? She came out with this bag of yarn, you guys, and was so sweet because she said that she picked these colors because she thought that I would like them and that they would be like my colors. And we'd never met before. I don't know how she nailed this. First of all, look at this guy. Are we joking? This is Art Yarns Silky Twist 200. It's 80% extra fine merino wool and 20% silk. Guys, there's 400 meters here. And it's the most gloriously soft, gorgeous yarn I have felt. I can't think of even what I'm going to make with this, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm getting into a shawl era. So I think that this would be a really fun, cozy shawl to make. So I loved this. Then this truly blew me away. This is merino possum woolen spun. It's 80% non-superwash merino, 20% New Zealand possum fur. And the color is called Time Pink Bells. These say Circus Tonic Handmade, and they're the most stunning neutral dusty pink, and they have this like grayish undertone to them. I think this would be the perfect thing for a hat or gloves or just like a little scarf. Some cute little accessory. I would adore this color, and it's so soft. The softest yarn ever. And then there was this, which is an Art Yarns kit. It's for, I think it's, I would guess Taj. So it says that there's yarn here for like this t-shirt or this shawl. And oh my gosh, the color of this yarn, you guys. This is maybe the softest thing I've ever touched. It says that it's 50-50 silk and cashmere. And this green color is the color of my life. I love this color so much. I'm very excited to own it now, and what a sweet thing. And I just thought that was the coolest kickoff ever to my day at Rhinebeck. It was the most amazing way to start the day. And Angela, thank you. Biggest thank you ever from me. I feel so special to have these yarns now, and truly you nailed it. I mean, clearly the color scheme is going with everything else around me here. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. A lucky girl. And that's everything, you guys. If you wanted to see more about my experience at Rhinebeck, last week's video was entirely about that, and I also included my purchases from Rhinebeck in there if you were curious to see what I picked up. So over the next week, I have a lot to get done. My darling cardigan has to be finished. My turtle has got to get done. And then I do feel good about having the Midland Neck, the Nomad Sweater, and my Christmas sweater all as little just kind of breaks from all of that along the way. But definitely the hyper focus this week is going to be the darling cardigan and the turtle. Please let me know, shell stitch or ruffle on the edge. And otherwise, I think that's everything I have for you today. If you enjoyed watching this video, I would so appreciate it if you would go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe and ring the bell, then you're going to be notified anytime I post a new video. However, you can usually expect a Saturday morning upload at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. With that, a big ol' thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, you guys. Bye.